Hey there, Musties! So, we just got back from seeing Godzilla -1. This is the spoiler review. Alright, so I'm Giant Musties, Big Musties, whatever you went by with last time, I don't remember.
I don't know either.
This guy was last seen in I think the Rampage review?
Yeah.
Okay, so, alright, we're all just going to talk about this, spoilers. So, first off, first impressions. Go ahead.
I love the camera work. Every time they had an opportunity to make Godzilla seem huge, he seemed huge and scary. Love the shots. The movie overall I thought was really good.
You honestly have to go with the camera work as well, but also like how when at the beginning, like when he looked a little bit like when it first showed him, he was like how he was like a little more like a dinosaur.
Like a dinosaur.
But
yeah.
then when it came back, he looked like an actual form that he had.
Yeah, they definitely did that. I noticed that from like similar to the 2016 film Shin Godzilla. When you first see Godzilla, that's not his final form. It wasn't as drastic as a change as the 2016 films, where he came up almost, I don't want to say like a worm, but he was, you know, definitely
drastic change.
Yeah. So yes, there was a lot that I liked about this too. I have a lot of conflicted emotions actually about this, but one thing that I really walked away loving about this movie was the music. That very first time Godzilla appears on the island, I was caught off guard. I actually jumped out of my seat a little bit whenever I wasn't expecting that camera to turn like that. However, I noticed during that whole scene the music was just building up, and even though my biggest complaint is once again the CGI, this is not Hollywood budget. If you remember Shin Godzilla in 2016, he was moving a lot slower, so he was able to animate and look more realistic. They went for, if you notice, a lot more agility. Godzilla swinging around, like fighting, like he was like shadow boxing, just fighting anything he wants, pretty much. But
At
it
least
didn't.
until the ending. And he's like, "I'm gonna stand here while you kill me."
Well, I think, he kind of did that in the city earlier. Whenever he used his atomic breath in the city, he kind of froze up for a while.
Yeah, I guess it was consistent. Like he used his energy up.
Yes.
Good point.
So, I just trying to get him to move rapidly, he was like, I want to say janky looking, like he would walk like this kind of, and it took me out of the moment every single time, and it was a real struggle. I thought it was going to improve later on, but I mean, they did daytime scenes, they were trying to do more action, they did a lot more CGI than they did with Shin Godzilla. It's just, it ended up milking out their budget, and I don't think it held up as well as it should have.
Do you think that lumbering movement might have been like kind of like a nod to the original ones in the suit? Because I feel like that looked like how he kind of moved.
I can see that.
Yeah, I thought that was on purpose, but I don't know. I wasn't in the director's room.
It could be homage to it, but I don't think it came out as well intended as it did. If it was intentional, I would have dropped that motion. Made him just slower in general.
Because you're right. At times he was just like quick agility, tail flip, karate chop, like.
Well, since we're on the downside about it, I want to mention one other thing that really kind of grinds my gears is the fact that they kind of copped out with the ending. Really, honestly.
Bringing the girl back. So are you talking about the ending? How they brought the girl back to life?
Yeah. Basically, I felt like that was unnecessary. I think. Okay, so let me backtrack for a second here. The character development in this, I feel like, was done really well. Like, I was really attached. I felt like the humans really had a struggle what they were fighting for.
Sure.
One thing, there's an anime in Japan that's really popular, probably like one of the most popular, if not the most. It's called Gundam. It's about giant robots. It's really about war and the cost of war and the recklessness of the people who lead war. And I always wanted something like that done in Godzilla, and this captures that. This is perfect for Godzilla. It really shows the cost of mankind's actions and the battles that we have to fight and who actually becomes the victims. With that being said, though, I feel like having the main character redeem himself towards the end and stuff, and find his new inspiration for carrying out his duties. Like, I was shocked that this whole movie followed a kamikaze pilot who basically crashes his own plane into an enemy to destroy the enemy and takes his own life in that process. And so obviously in the beginning of the movie, he chickens out. And then he finds this girl who he's not even related to, this little daughter, but becomes a daughter to him, and that becomes his purpose of wanting her to have a future. And I was completely sold on him sacrificing himself for that. He doesn't. He ends up living. I called that. I in the middle of the movie, I was just like, they're alluding to like him ejecting the seat. I noticed that the mechanic guy, that Takabashi or whatever his name was, the mechanic guy, he was pointing at the seat for a second. I thought something's up with that, and I caught on. So I was okay with even him living at the last second, the main character, because I felt like that was a nice little, just a little cherry on top for a happy ending. But then whenever they go and find the girlfriend is also still alive and fairly well living, it was overkill. That really didn't set well with me.
Would you liked it better if he didn't know that there was a parachute on the plane? Because I thought that's what they were going with. I thought he was going to pull the knob thinking he's going to activate the bomb, and then he's going to unexpectedly fly out of the plane.
He pulls the wrong switch at the last second.
Right, like he ejects without realizing that he saved, because his intention was redemption, and he did get his redemption, and then I thought he'd be rewarded by being able to stay alive and also keep his word to take care of the girl. I thought that's where they're going. I feel like they kind of added that scene at the end, maybe. Like they were like, oh, we'll make it so he knew he was going to survive as a plot twist. I don't know. I liked it better when he didn't think, he was going to survive, because that made it more powerful, I felt. Because that was a lot of commitment in that moment.
I mean, that was me giving it a pass. I was okay with it. They could have had something like the mechanic. The protagonist has not flown this plane before. The end plane that was...
Right. I thought about that the whole time. I'm like, he's never flown this experimental jet plane, which it wasn't before. And he just flew like an ace. Even though he was only a kamikaze pilot.
For sure, yeah.
And pretty young, so he probably didn't fly a plane for that long. I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but...
Right, and I think a plane like that did exist during the war. I remember seeing some really freaky experimental planes that maybe did or didn't fly.
But it wasn't a jet plane.
Oh, was it a jet plane?
It was not a jet plane.
Okay.
He kept referring to jet planes, but I think that was probably just like a translation error. Because they were all prop planes.
Could that be what they had called it back then? Like, for example, everybody kept on saying what AI is coming, and what we get is not quite AI, but we call it AI just because it's the closest thing to it. Could that have been something they were calling a jet plane back then because they thought it was the next step towards it?
Okay, see, like, like a prop plane with the propellers on it?
Yeah.
And then like an F-16, how it has the thing where it sucks the air into it, does not have a propeller on it.
But it's
one's a jet, the other one's just
But the fact that it's on the back of it, though, and it's pushing out like a jet would, kind of, I don't know, basically a prototype or something.
The jet is how it brings it through the airframe.
Okay, all right. It's a technicality.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I'm not a jet specialist, but that's my understanding of it. I think it was just a translation issue. I don't think it was a big deal, but I laughed every time they said jet. I'm like, it's not a jet. You're an idiot.
Right. And but even the girlfriend, back to that for a second.
Sure.
Even though they brought her back from the dead, even when she did supposedly die earlier in the film, I feel like that was exaggerated too much. I would have been completely okay with her just falling to her death out of the train whenever it was being lifted up into the air. And I felt like that would have been dramatic because she was kind of trapped on there and couldn't get out. She grabbed onto that bar and was kind of dangling from there. I thought that's a little unrealistic. That would have ripped her arms off falling, I think, trying grabbing onto a bar. But then she fell into the water, which was a lot closer to the ground than I realized, because this Godzilla is a lot smaller than past ones.
Oh, yeah.
And so maybe that's why she was able to somehow survive the fall to the ground, but I feel like it wasn't realistic either.
And her character development was strange, because like she wanted to die for a moment. Like she was just aimlessly walking through the streets.
I think she was in shock.
Yeah, that's true. And then she could have gone in the alley with him, but then...
Well, it kind of happened so fast. But my point... True. But that brings up another point, is right after the main girl survived that train accident, she's wandering the street. I don't know how big this town is or this city is, but for the main character to just suddenly, in the middle of chaos, run up and find her and be like, hey, here you are, let's go. I was like, that's a little hard to digest right there.
All they had to do is go sideways, not keep walking down the road.
Right. Well, I mean, Godzilla could have walked through the building, I guess, but I don't know. There's a lot going on. But, yeah, she pushes the main character out of the way to survive, so he can survive, and she gets obliterated. And I thought, okay, that was kind of epic. They kind of built up to that right there, and I was willing to let everything go, but then they brought her back in the end. I'd spent too much time talking about that, but go ahead.
Yeah, unless she actually didn't actually die, and just like got when she got shot off screen, someone ended up finding her.
Somebody found her off screen?
That's what my guess is.
Yeah.
Somebody found her off screen when he was walking away or whatever, between when she pushed him
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the end.
That makes sense. Yeah, they probably found her like that. But I guess what I'm saying is the writing of the movie, they should have had her. Remember we were talking about this in the car before about like people need to die tragically to make the feeling of Godzilla. Yeah, they should have kept her dead that way. The writing, to have her stay dead.
To it.
Yes.
Like they already did it. They didn't need to do anything, but they undid it. There was an effort to undo it.
Right. So, what did you think about the whole World War II aspect and stuff? Like, do you feel like most of that, other than the plane thing, was quite believable? Because I was really
just what they were calling the plane, the right thing. But like all the stuff looked like it would belong in that time. I thought it was pretty neat. You know, even the tanks and everything. And I liked the commentary from the civilians later. How we built our tanks too crappy. We didn't put parachutes in here. There was a lot of social commentary on the Imperial Japan that I thought was interesting. So like. I thought that was cool, like they were frustrated, these soldiers coming back from a war, and, in the case of the main character, like, he wasn't really appreciated at first. He was sort of blamed for, like, people that he couldn't control dying. And I think that all fits into that, like, soldiers coming back from war, the post-war period when you're losing country. Like, I thought that all tied in very nicely, and, with the time frame. Yeah,
I was very amazed at, like, I was actually really humbled by the human situation in this film.
Yeah.
Like, if you've ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life, it's not necessarily a message about you need to live the most minimalist, but it's about saying that, like, you can still do it and, I don't know, find some kind of peace and satisfyingness to it. I got It's a Wonderful Life vibes from this movie a lot, where basically after the bombs had been dropped on Japan, thank you, basically they're living like in these little almost shelter huts and stuff like this, and I really bought into that set, and that these people were living in these rundown homes and everything.
Like Godzilla had already attacked.
You can let it go for now, it's fine, thanks.
Like the devastation was so extreme,
For sure, yeah.
So like they came back into this terrible situation, and then their whole livelihood after rebuilding was being threatened again, which I think played again into like the human spirit of like getting together and fighting against another insurmountable foe, and this time winning.
Yeah,
for now.
It was definitely almost an arc of not Japan itself, but the people of Japan having an opportunity to redeem themselves.
Right, because they all felt broken and embarrassed that they had lost the war. There was a lot of pride in that. So, yeah, I thought they did a lot of good jobs in creating the story, making it meaningful from multiple angles. As you said, it was like one of the first times like there was human development, and you actually cared about the characters. You didn't want to see them die, and you were kind of rooting for them to win.
And I think this movie almost angers me because of that. Like, there's so much about this movie that I like, but to see the shortcoming with the CGI still. There was times I really felt like I was just watching some like cheap like dollar store DVD kind of almost. Like maybe it was. Yeah, I mean, there were some parts where it really hit well, but like that very first time when Godzilla appears, I just felt like the animation was like, it's something you find at like the Dollar Tree for.
Now let me ask you this: do you think the fact that we saw it on IMAX had anything to do with why it looks so bad?
Possibly, maybe on a smaller screen it'll look a little bit better. Home? Yes, that's a good point. Yes,
because I didn't notice it as much. I noticed it sometimes, but I was just happy to be there.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I appreciate both of you for coming along and everything. But just to emphasize why that actually angers me is because Hollywood has that big budget money, and whenever they do a Godzilla movie, the characters are completely forgettable. Godzilla doesn't even have that meaning. He's almost like a superhero who shows up to fight other monsters.
Right, and they shot him at night too, so like,
yeah,
really appreciate the CGI. That's a good point. We almost need like the two studios to come together.
Yeah, we need Toho to write movies for Legendary and Warner Brothers to do that.
It's not a bad idea.
I also was actually, so I really do like the movie. I love it as a Godzilla fan. There were some great shocking moments. I feel like every scene. Did you notice that like it seemed to be inspired by the movie Jaws a lot?
Yeah, somewhat.
Like the shark in the boat aspect. Yeah. I actually really liked that whole aspect of it and stuff. I really, yeah. I was actually not scared of Godzilla, but scared of the situations that these characters found themselves in. And I was like, thank God I don't have to go up in these characters' shoes right now and have to make any kind of sacrifice like that.
Yeah, Godzilla was definitely portrayed very scary, and he always had an answer to whatever the humans did. They came in with a destroyer, blew him back, and then he just swims under them, and oh hey, you're gone. You know, like he was almost like a god in a way.
Yeah,
just unstoppable, unkillable. But yeah, I like how they made him scary. You know, he had the battle damage. He looked like kind of like a ghoul. I thought it was well done.
I will say though, and I guess another minor complaint I have is I feel like they made changes to Godzilla that weren't necessarily necessary. They were just put in there to be different. After Shin Godzilla had reinvented Godzilla in so many ways, I feel like they felt like they had to do something shocking. Now they've done the regenerative stuff, like when he gets injured, he heals. They've done that before. I got that. I liked seeing Godzilla with half his face missing multiple times. But I will say though, like having his spines pop up out of his body when he gets ready to attack, are they supposed to be like those nuclear fusion core things that pop out or whatever of like do you know what I mean? Of like a nuclear factory or something like that? The actual.
I kind of know what you're going for. Yeah, it's like the weapons arming. Yeah, but like, that's like something a machine does, not an animal.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't find it necessary for Godzilla to have his spines pop out of his back.
Especially, I thought it looked cool, but it wasn't necessary.
It did look cool. I did like that. Yeah, it just didn't make sense necessarily. Especially at the very end, whenever his spines pop out even more at the very end. It's just like, wait a minute, like how far into his body do they retract? Or like they poking out through his stomach whenever they comes back in?
What even is his body? You know what I mean?
But maybe once it pops out, does it stay out permanently? Just gets it out further each time maybe or something.
Oh yeah, you know what, I don't remember seeing what the spines did after he fires his weapon.
Yeah, they don't really show it. It always seems like they cut away and stuff like that.
Yeah, he has like a dramatic pose, kind of standing there like, you know.
Is there any other last thoughts that you want to throw in this?
The ending, so when it shows like after the plane goes in his mouth and explodes, his like head's gone or whatever, he starts like crumbling down in the ocean. When I think either after, like before, like the whales going down into the ocean, it showed like the big blob. Oh,
like I don't know if that was his heart recovering or if that, because they actually did that in the 2001 Godzilla movie, I believe. Yeah, it was called Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Attack, the longest Godzilla title ever. Where, yeah, basically Godzilla got himself blown up and the only thing that was left was his heart, and then it started regenerating at the very end. I don't know if that was exactly his heart. I think it was a callback to that moment because that is one of the more critically acclaimed Godzilla movies. But yes, I actually... As this movie went on, like I remember thinking that they announced that they were doing a World of Godzilla cinematic universe, but I really didn't see them how they were going to connect this to anything else, and it seemed like they rid off Godzilla. But as you said, at the end, when it shows that he's still alive and he's recovering, I was like, okay, they really are going to build off of this and build something. I'm not sure if I actually want to see a sequel to this, though. I would rather just have this maybe be another standalone like Shin Godzilla and just do another reboot or not reboot or reimagining, but maybe jump ahead in the future, do its own, maybe loose sequel that's not necessarily connected. You can pretend to connect it, or if you don't want to. But
yeah, what I was thinking, like maybe like I think like you want to see like maybe like a different one, not like a thing off of this.
A different Godzilla, yeah.
Yeah, like I was thinking like maybe still have this Godzilla, but once it like after it's like from the time it happens, maybe be like 100 years or so into the future.
Okay, so a little bit into our future, because that would make it like the 2040s out here or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Then it's like, but have it like World War III esque
World War III
type of thing.
You could do that. I mean, yeah, I suppose there's a way to do that. They've reinvented Godzilla in ways I never even thought possible. With that being said, though, there was rumors originally that, and I thought this was true for the longest time, was that this movie was supposed to take place in 2 different time zones. It starts out in the 1940s and then it ends in the 1990s. That obviously didn't happen.
It was way off.
Yeah.
Because I think the movie only spans like, what, 4 years at most?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It started in 45, and I think it goes up to like 47 or 48 at the most.
Yeah, it's very short after.
Yeah.
I did like how the name for the monster came from like villagers. who just knew about the monster. It was like their own kind of like boogeyman. So
it was like that. It was like that in the original 1954 movie. Also, Godzilla was a mythological like dragon that lived in the sea or something like that.
I see.
I will say though, like I did notice like one thing that they can build off for a sequel though is like this creature comes up and attacks, and at the same time they came up with this idea of like putting basically a megaphone in the water to lure Godzilla out, because they said that Godzilla would recognize competition or something if he heard his own voice roar. That could be used to theorize that there's other Godzillas out there, and maybe we could get a Godzilla versus Godzilla movie, or just build off into other kaiju in the future. But they seem to lay the groundwork a little bit with that concept of Godzilla recognizing another alpha predator out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. The only loophole would be getting the new other Godzillas to be the size of the new Godzilla, assuming he regenerates to his full size.
Having Godzilla smaller in this movie, he was only like 140 something feet tall or whatever in this movie, I think, or something like that.
After the mutation?
Yes, I think so. I think after. I could be wrong. I don't know. Point is though, is having him smaller, they could do things in this movie that they normally don't do. They can make him a little more up close and personal.
Yeah.
And the whole way that they defeated them in the end, I thought they were going to do the oxygen destroyer, where they come up with like basically a chemical bomb. That's how they killed Godzilla in 1954. They didn't go that route with this. They did something completely different, and I wasn't sure I was going to buy into it, but when it came down to the final battle, I was into it. But
yeah,
just quick, we got to wrap up. We got like less than a minute, I think. Got 45 seconds.
Yeah, when the scientist was explaining his plan, I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. Let's see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, I was willing to go along for the ride because everything else had been presented so well so far. I kind of trusted the story would be, acceptable at the least, and I found it to be entertaining.
Yeah.
The humanity's plan, the whole thing, and it was tension the whole time. It was just, that whole final battle I thought was cool.
Right. Final thoughts?
It was actually a pretty good movie. I recommend it.
You recommend it? Okay.
Yep.
For Godzilla fans, I definitely recommend it. For general audience, I think you can find something, but you have to you have to withhold your disbelief a little bit for that.
That's fair, yeah. I think anytime you have a giant monster movie, I need to do that. This one is fun, but it also has, other things for everybody.
15 seconds.
A little bit for everyone, I think.
All right. I will maybe update some more thoughts as this goes along. If either of you think of something, let me know. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen it. Are you taking anybody special with you? Thanks for watching.
See you later.